Part 102. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1011. The latest chapter of the Wanchaiwu I Created is updated the fastest. Just standing there, it is filled with a terrifying power that can destroy the stars and devour the world. This is a famous figure in the void. The devourer, Bhadas, he feeds on the world, and his body is even larger than a world. It can be said that in terms of pure size, it is the limit of void creatures. Even the current form of the ancient god is much smaller than his body. He is not afraid of the ancient god, and his power can suppress even the eternal existence. In terms of pure power, this devourer has stood at the top of the void. The ancient god just looked at him contemptuously. "Stupid guy, do you think that huge size is power? It's just a pig. Disappear, garbage." After the faint words fell, the devourer Bhadas felt the fear from the heart. He didn't know where this fear came from, he just felt that there was an incomparable danger shrouding him. He had no way to avoid this danger. The next moment, his face became stiff, and then he suddenly lost consciousness. His will in the ancient god palace was also shattered. His original body, the huge body still in the void, also disintegrated in an instant. It turned into countless basic particles and melted into the void, leaving no trace. Some strong men in the ancient god palace who had always been enemies with the devourer Bhadas showed horror on their faces. "Impossible, he is dead. How could he die so easily? What happened?" Everyone was shocked. Bhadas was clearly an existence that had pushed his power to the extreme. But in front of the ancient god, he was wiped out with just one sentence. This terrifying deterrence instantly made everyone tremble from the bottom of their hearts. Only Lin Yi, the president, the master of the fairy palace, and the soul master had a condensed face. They had already seen what was going on. Just now, Bhadas's mind should have been devoured, which led to the demise of his body. The three of them were very close at this time. They looked at each other, but did not speak or show their heads. However, they wanted to stop fighting, but some people did not think so. The ancient god's eyes swept over countless people and fell on the president. President of the Void Destiny Committee, because of the protection of the miracle coin, as the first existence in the void to step into eternity, what do you think? Do you want to resist? The ancient god looked at the president coldly and ruthlessly, as if waiting for his answer. Or waiting for his surrender. At this time, everyone's eyes fell on the president, waiting for his answer. The president is equivalent to the benchmark of the whole world. If he chooses to surrender, then other forces in the void will have no choice. If the eternal existence has no ability to resist the ancient god, then they have even less hope. Just like Bhadas just now, that is an existence that can devour and destroy the world. But it was wiped out by the ancient god with a word. Maybe the ancient god also dealt with them with a word. At this time, before the president spoke, a will came to everyone's mind. Can you eliminate the weirdness? Accompanying this thought, everyone's eyes turned to the person who sent out this thought. It was Lin Yi, who looked at the ancient god calmly. The moment he came here, he realized something was wrong. A third-level spiritual power affected all the will incarnations that came here. In other words, the minds of everyone here have been exposed to the ancient god in front of them. The fate of the devourer Bhadas further confirmed his speculation. Of course, this spiritual fluctuation was blocked from his will and could not touch his mind at all. When he saw the ancient god asking the president, he naturally had his own purpose in speaking. He didn't want all the strong men in the void to be controlled by the ancient god in front of him. He has huge benefits from them, and each world group has to pay him 1/10 of the output. And the president is a benchmark-like figure. If he surrenders, others will have only this choice, and there is no other way to survive. Gu Shen's eyes fell on Lin Yi. You are Lin Yi from the Wanchaiwu, who created the existence of the Lingbo weapon system. This is a force that surprised me, a force I have never seen before. Weird? We can naturally eliminate it? Hearing Gu Shen's words, Lin Yi's heart sank slightly. At the spiritual level, these ancient gods may have obtained a lot of things. It is not impossible to even eliminate the essence of weirdness. Hearing Gu Shen's words, everyone's heart moved. If Gu Shen can really eliminate weirdness, surrendering to Gu Shen is not unacceptable in the last resort. At least it is much better than being destroyed by the power of Gu Shen. And now there are quite a lot of forces that have not obtained the Lingbo weapon system. Some of them are even on the way to the Hope Alliance, and they don't know whether they can finally arrive. The power displayed by the ancient gods just now is quite terrifying, and some people have already thought of seeking the protection of the ancient gods. It's just that they don't know that this idea is affected by the fluctuations of the ancient gods' minds. Everyone who can become the leader of a party will never submit to anyone unless they are facing a desperate situation. Now they have only seen the power of the ancient god, and they have made such a decision that goes against common sense. Lin Yi saw all this very clearly, and the true destiny solution can also be used here. Lin Yi heard the answer of the ancient god, his face was calm. So you have mastered the power to destroy the essence of weirdness. Is it obtained from the spiritual level? The ancient god looked at Lin Yi with some surprise, and you have obtained more than just the power to destroy weirdness. There is also the power to devour other people's hearts. The Bhatas just now, I'm afraid he was devoured by you, right? Hearing Lin Yi's words, all the void storers in the palace were shocked. Obviously, Lin Yi seemed to know a lot of things they didn't know. The word mind gave many people ideas. There have never been many smart people in this world, and the power of the mind is not that no one has practiced it. It's just that this power is very mysterious and difficult to master. Most of them are at the first level, indirectly using the power of the mind. Some are not even at the first level. Lin Yi's words opened up a whole new world for them. And you also used the power of your mind to influence the will of everyone here and distort their thinking ability. Let all their thinking methods gradually lean towards you, submit to you, and finally become your soldiers completely. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1012. Under the influence of your power, they also exposed their spiritual coordinates and became prey that you could capture at will. That's how Bhatas was wiped out. The ancient god looked at Lin Yi calmly. What the other party said was very correct, but he didn't care. Are you done? Lin Yi looked at the ancient god and smiled faintly. I'm done. You guessed right. I did affect their will. And I also found the coordinates of their souls at the spiritual level. As long as I want, I can devour their souls at will. But so what? Do they have any other choice? In addition to surrendering, there is only death. As the ancient god spoke coldly, everyone was cold all over. The information leaked from Conan and Lin Yi's conversation was quite amazing. These people have boundless wisdom, and they instantly captured a lot of key points from their information. In general, in one sentence, their life and death are no longer under their control, and even their thoughts have been distorted and affected, silently. At this time, everyone was silent, just as the ancient god said. When they stepped into the ancient temple, they had already stepped into a trap. They had to surrender or die. Lin Yi suddenly smiled. That's not necessarily the case. They still owe me a lot of things. Your behavior is stealing my property from me. That is absolutely intolerable. The ancient god looked at Lin Yi calmly, and said with a smile in his eyes, haha, I am really interested. What if you can't tolerate it? Conan's smile became brighter. Since it is intolerable, then break it. Are you so confident? Your spiritual wave seems to be a kind of spiritual power. I can feel that its quality is very high. But don't you think we haven't done any tests? This power is not enough to shield our influence on them. looking at the ancient god who was still calm and confident. Lin Yi's smile was still bright. If that's the case, then I can only let you understand that although you are the creator of the void, you are really too arrogant. The ancient god looked at Lin Yi calmly, and a trace of doubt rose in his heart. Does he really have the power to remove the influence of my power? Or is there a spiritual existence behind him who supports him? A trace of doubt flashed through the mind of the ancient god, and then he said calmly, "If that's the case, then let me see what means you have, so that I can understand where my arrogance lies." At this time, Lin Yi and Gu Shen'e were talking tit for tat. The trillions of void strongmen in the palace were watching quietly. All of them were trying their best to restrain the inexplicable worship, admiration, and good feelings for Gu Shen'e in their hearts. A kind of fear emerged in their hearts, and this feeling of uncontrolled thinking made them feel angry and helpless from the bottom of their hearts. And Lin Yi, who stood in front of them, might be their only hope. Everyone was watching intently, what exactly Lin Yi was going to do. "Since you want to see it so much, then I'll let you see it. This is no longer your era." The next moment, the true destiny and perseverance broke out from his mind. Like a storm, it blew across the entire palace, covering all the wills in the palace. Then, all the strong men felt their hearts were empty, as if something was swept away from their spirits, hearts, souls, and minds. They felt that some inexplicable shadows shrouding their hearts were swept away. Lin Yi's thoughts echoed in their hearts, "Leave, don't expose your will to the ancient gods in the future. The ancient gods will find your spiritual coordinates and wipe you out from the spiritual level. They can devour your souls and turn them into their own food." With Lin Yi's reminder, everyone immediately made a choice. In an instant, they disconnected from the ancient god's palace, and then the ancient god's palace was empty. The ancient god looked at all this calmly, his eyes fixed on Lin Yi, who was left alone. A very strange ability, exclusive to the spiritual level. This ability is really fascinating, the power of absolute shielding. You should have more than just this ability. The ability you just used is exerted using spiritual waves as energy. Its effect is to shield all influences on the soul level, the spiritual level, and the will level. Absolute shielding, it's incredible. You can use the power of the mind to do this kind of thing. You really opened my eyes. If there is a power that can absolutely shield the influence of the mind, is there a power that can absolutely shield physical damage? The ancient god seemed to be talking to himself, but his eyes were always fixed on Lin Yi. "From the look of you, my guess should be correct. Shielding the influence of the mind, shielding the influence of physics, are there other wonderful powers? In other words, your spiritual power is a self-contained system, and the ultimate goal is to shield everything that can hurt you and gain absolute freedom. The only one in eternity, absolute freedom. This kind of power is really trembling." Listening to the words of the ancient god, Lin Yi was shocked. The other party actually deduced so many things just by using his true destiny perseverance. This vision and knowledge, as well as the terrifying thinking ability, shocked him. The ancient god looked at Lin Yi calmly, and a hint of deep meaning appeared in his golden eyes. "We will meet again. Lin Yi of the Wanchaiwu, I remember your existence." The next moment, Lin Yi felt that the sky and the earth were dark in front of him, and the will in the ancient temple lost its existence and returned to the third body. His face was solemn, and the ancient god brought him great pressure. It was completely different from all the enemies he had encountered before. The other party had touched some of his foundations, which was something he had never encountered before. In this troubled time, the return of these ancient gods, I don't know what kind of changes will these ancient gods bring to this world. At this time, in the Hope Alliance, all the strong men involved in this trip to the ancient god palace began to contact and communicate with each other. One after another, the will was communicating in the area controlled by the Hope Alliance. Lin Yi's name was once again pushed to the forefront, and countless people were inquiring more carefully about his existence. But Lin Yi's existence has always been a mystery. Even if they use the power to trace back time, they cannot find Lin Yi's origin. Everything about him is vague and cannot be tracked or viewed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1013. They can only infer some things that happened in Lin Yi's past through the people around him. They can even see everything and the endings of Honglianja and Langxing. But once it comes to Lin Yi himself, it will become blurry. Lin Yi's true destiny can not only shield tangible attacks, but also shield this kind of prying from time. This ensures that his past will not be discovered by any existence and is in an absolutely safe state. In the end, Lin Yi is still a mystery that cannot be detected by anyone. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. In the Wanchaiwu, the chairman of the Void Destiny Committee came here and looked at Lin Yi. Mr. Lin, what do you think of the appearance of the ancient god? Actually, there is no opinion, Lin Yi said calmly. If no one offends me, I will not offend anyone. Now the weirdness is rampant, this is what needs to be focused on. If the ancient gods can eliminate some of the weirdness, it will greatly relieve our pressure. Now the power of the mind has entered the sight of the powerful in the void. These people are extremely wise. Once all the forces in the entire void begin to study the power of the mind. When the mind is mastered by most people, it is only a matter of time. By then, all life will have a certain resistance to the power of the ancient gods. Then the danger of the ancient gods will naturally be infinitely reduced. What we need most now is just time. This is the advice I can give you. The president nodded, it's almost the same as my idea. The president waved his hand lightly, and a hazy longsword appeared in front of him. This is the product of my spiritual embodiment, integrated into my eternal way. I want to ask you to take a look at how different it is from those ancient beings. Lin Yi looked at the longsword floating in front of the president, which contained the information of the 5 innate ways. They blended into one, exuding an eternal nature. The fusion of the power of the mind makes the spiritual power emitted by this longsword truly descend into this world. This long sword integrates the eternal nature interwoven by the imprints of the 5 innate principles, and the power it emits is very amazing. It can almost carry all the spiritual power of the president, allowing the power of the mind to descend directly into this world. That is the power that can change reality at will. In terms of power alone, you are no less than those ancient beings. Even in the dark side gate, the 3 mysterious beings I met were on par with you. Hearing Conan's words, the president nodded slowly. In this case, I have a certain degree of confidence. But I still want to ask you a question. Do you have the ability to make an artifact that can defend against the influence of the power of the ancient gods? After all, the power of the 3rd level of the mind is too dangerous. According to our inference, ordinary people have almost no possibility of resisting it. Lin Yi thought for a moment, slowly shook his head and said, I have no choice. Because my real power can only be used by myself, or within a certain range around me, I can protect them. It is impossible to let them use this power alone. Hearing this, the president's eyes showed a trace of solemnity. In troubled times, it seems that many people will throw themselves into the arms of the ancient gods. A bloody storm is about to begin, and I wonder what the ending will be. Lin Yi looked into the distance. The situation may not be as bad as we imagined. After all, the most troublesome thing now is the weirdness, and even the ancient gods cannot ignore the harm of weirdness. Looking at the disappearing back of the president, Lin Yi's eyes flashed a little solemn. In the world group where the giant crocodile beast god is located, a huge existence emitting golden light all over the body descended outside the beast god palace. His eyes locked on number 4 in the palace, and a trace of coldness appeared in his eyes. Haha, you guys dare to turn the tables, you really don't know how to live or die. You dare to occupy the body of seeing. Number 4 in the palace slowly raised his head, saw through the void, and fell on the descending ancient god. He smiled coldly, the strong prey on the weak, if you have the ability, come and kill me. As soon as the voice fell, a huge golden figure had walked out of the palace. With every step he took, his size doubled. When he came in front of Gu Shenkong, he had become a golden figure as huge as Gu Shenkong. The two figures exuded a majestic pressure and stood outside the beast god palace. The next moment, they had already fought. They turned into two golden lights and collided directly with each other. A huge shockwave swept across the surroundings, and the beast god palace turned into ashes in an instant. The 5 major rules of this void were all collapsing, turning into a pure mess of chaos. The two golden figures collided savagely in it, and each collision would cause greater chaos. For the two of them, the rules of the void had no binding force, just like paper, which would break once torn. This battle quickly attracted attention in the world group of the beast god world, and countless people were watching this sudden outbreak of battle. Many people have seen that this is a battle between ancient gods. The most terrifying thing about the battle is that chaos is constantly spreading. In a short period of time, the chaos seems to have caused a chain reaction. In the 1/10 area of the world group, all the rules are completely chaotic, and hundreds of world groups are affected. And their endings are all completely broken in the chaos, and any kind of power is meaningless. This news is also spreading to the entire void at an alarming speed, and countless people have seen this scene. Including the top leaders of the Hope Alliance, they also saw this almost irresistible scene. Some people are already trembling in their hearts. How can such power be resisted? Is this the combat power of the ancient gods in the void? And this is not the end, but the beginning. In just 1 hour, the world group where the giant crocodile beast god is located was completely covered by this chaos. A world group was destroyed so simply, without any effective resistance, and only death awaited them. For the first time, all the void beings have a clear understanding of the combat power of the ancient gods in the void. It can easily destroy one world after another. Lin Yi also saw this battle, and while he was surprised, he also felt that it was natural. No one knew the rules of the void better than the ancient gods. They only needed to rewrite the rules of the void at will, and destroying the world would be as easy as breathing for them. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1014. It just turns order into disorder. Life in the void has no advantage in fighting against the ancient gods. They are completely controlled. Their opponents are only those ancient beings, or like the president, who truly integrates the 5 major rules and gives birth to eternal strong men. Otherwise, no matter how powerful the power is, it will be meaningless in front of them. It only takes the collapse of the rules that constitute their power to make them lose control directly and be as fragile as mortals. Countless information flashed through Lin Yi's mind, and he quickly grasped the real killer of the ancient gods. If he can think of it, others can think of it too. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. There was silence in the void, and countless people watched this battle. They knew that from this moment on, the ancient gods were the uncrowned kings of the void, and they actually had no choice at all. Some mysterious eyes also fell on the battlefield, quietly watching the two ancient gods fighting. In the desert void, there was an illusory figure, crossing countless distances, watching the two ancient gods fighting. Ancient God Kong, ancient God Star? How could they fight? They have always had a good relationship. In the most distant era, ancient God Star was infected by the weird and sealed by the ancient gods. Why does it seem that there is no sign of infection now? It seems that something happened during the time when I didn't pay attention to the void. The illusory figure was thoughtful, and he was filled with a dream-like ancient atmosphere. Weird invasion and soul hunting are just the precursors of the crisis. The next is the real melee period. The hidden things will surface, and the mission of the void is over. The illusory figure murmured to himself, telling some extremely terrifying information. At this time, a war also broke out in another direction in the void. Ancient god Fan was fighting with 5 huge black shadows. The terrifying fluctuations created a huge chaotic land, like a black hole, swallowing everything around. The battle not only destroyed the rules of the void, but also spread a terrifying spiritual power, changing the environment around them at will. The thoughts of the ancient god Brahma echoed in the void, "I didn't expect you to enter the power of the second level of the mind. Mastered the real spiritual power." Number 1 laughed coldly, "You are not bad either, you actually found the power of the third level of the mind. Those traces of more ancient existences. Although we can't beat you, you can't kill us just by wanting to." At this time, the terrifying spiritual power is constantly exploding here, and this power distorts everything and changes everything. And their battle also spread quickly, just like a chain reaction. Any void that touches the aftermath of their battle will collapse in an instant. At this time, the people who observed this battle found that the void seemed to be as fragile as glass in front of the real strong. At this time, countless forces in the void were observing the 2 sudden battles through various methods. Some people wanted to find a way to defeat the ancient gods through observation, but what made them feel desperate was that this was a force that could not be resisted at all. No matter what kind of system or weapon, it is meaningless in the face of a war between strong men of this level. In another corner of the void, 2 figures of ancient gods were looking at the 2 people in front of them. One was wearing a black robe, and the other was like a shadow. "Long time no see, He and Ying, I didn't expect you were still alive." The one in the black robe seemed to be called He. "You all didn't die, how could we die? Gu Shenzhen and Hun. How did you find time to come to us? Do you want to fight with us too?" Gu Shenzhen shook his head and said, "No need, you also know the purpose of the existence of the void. I'm here to form an alliance for the upcoming crisis." "Alliance? How many people?" "I will find all those old guys who survived before the birth of the void. As many alliances as there are. We have learned a lot of information at the spiritual level. The crisis we encountered at the beginning was just a precursor to everything. The void is bigger than we imagined. We only see part of it. Not only us, but others are also struggling." He and Ying looked at each other. As the oldest existences, they knew too well why the void was established. "Okay, let's form an alliance. We all just want to survive." At this time, He suddenly said, "In fact, you can also persuade them to join us. You have seen their combat power, which is not inferior to ours. Or do you still want to become a complete body? You should know that with their current strength, the possibility of doing so is very low." The ancient gods Zhen and Hun said calmly, "Let's see if they can survive this wave first. Only if they survive, they are qualified to talk to us." He, Ying, and the other 2 ancient gods disappeared here, and no one knew where they went. In the desert void, it seems that this war has stimulated something. An ancient, extremely huge figure slowly awakened from the desert void. This is a monster that looks like a human, but has countless tentacles and huge eyes on its head. Its body is probably as big as thousands of worlds, its trunk is covered with fine scales, and its body is perfect and coordinated, like a terrifying fighting machine. Its eyes also penetrated countless distances and saw the traces of 2 battles. An ancient thought was slowly echoing, the breath of the Creator. Are they back? The desert void is an area that has expanded from the life void over countless years. This place is synonymous with chaos, and there is almost no life. Even if there is, it is extremely powerful. Otherwise, it would have died in the storm of chaos. This terrifying monster seems to be one of them. The existence born in the desert void seems to have extreme wisdom. Creator. As the ancient thought slowly trembled, he gently tore open the time and space in front of him. A huge hand, crossing countless distances, slowly fell towards the battlefield of Gu Shenkong and number 4. This was a hand that covered the sky and the sun. The two beings with the bodies of ancient gods were like toys under this hand. Facing the sudden attack, both number 4 and Gu Shenkong showed fierceness on their faces. Who dared to interfere in their battle? This was a complete contempt for their existence. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1015. The latest chapter of the Wanchaiwu I Created is updated the fastest. A golden spear appeared in the hand of Gu Shenkong, which was composed of infinite spiritual power. Randomly slashing it towards the top of the head, time and space were shredded, and everything returned to its original state. A scratch appeared on the huge palm. A huge crack appeared on the palm at a speed visible to the naked eye, and black liquid gushed out of it, falling on the entire battlefield like raindrops. A golden book appeared in the hand of number 4, and the same magnificent spiritual power continued to gush out from it. Transformed into various magnificent natural phenomena, colliding with the power of Gu Shenkong. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Facing the attack from the sky, a black flame bloomed and burned all the falling black blood into ashes. The wound of the black giant palm was spreading rapidly, and the basic structure of the black giant palm was collapsing at an alarming speed. But at this moment, a black force that could not be described in words spread out from the giant palm. The wound of the palm was quickly repaired, the diffused spiritual power was also expelled, and all the rules were repaired again. The new power made Gu Shenkong and number 4 stop attacking, and they couldn't help but look up at the sky. This sudden attack also attracted everyone's attention. The huge palm did not attack again, but slowly withdrew and disappeared into the void. The passage of the void was also quickly closed, as if everything just now was just an illusion. At this time, Gu Shenkong looked at number 4, "Let go of Xing's body, otherwise I will hunt you down until you die." Number 4 sneered, "Haha, Xing and I are two sides of the same coin. He himself encountered an accident. Now I come to take back my own body. What's wrong with that? What does it have to do with you?" Gu Shenkong's eyes suddenly became gloomy, revealing a trace of coldness. A shadow can only be a shadow forever, and it can't become a body. You'd better go back and be a shadow obediently. Gu Shenkong was silent for a moment, and the spear in his hand disappeared as if it melted and merged into his body. Gu Shenkong's body began to undergo terrifying changes, the first of which was to become illusory. The body began to grow suddenly, turning into some kind of extremely huge existence, no longer bound by the body, and releasing the vast amount of spiritual energy in the body. The infinite spiritual energy burst out, allowing Gu Shenkong to expand infinitely. The infinite spiritual power enveloped this chaotic area. Instantly, a completely closed spiritual world was formed. Number 4 and this airspace completely disappeared from the void and entered an inexplicable level. This level cannot be perceived by ordinary people. Only Lin Yi could see it very clearly. The light of the true destiny solution crossed the distance of billions of voids and saw here directly. It was a strange spiritual world, connected to the spiritual level, and extracted from the world of the void. At this time in that spiritual world, number 4 encountered a huge crisis. The body of the ancient god he occupied was rapidly losing vitality under the influence of the surrounding forces. The special power in the ancient god's body was falling into a state of death and could not make any resistance at all. He took a deep breath, and a trace of solemnity appeared in his eyes. The next moment, a huge spiritual light permeated from No 4's body. This power covered the body of the ancient god, and the silent power was once again full of vitality. But number 4 was still in danger, because in this world, he had no specific enemies at all. This world was his enemy. He encouraged the power of the ancient god, wrapped in the spiritual light, and launched crazy attacks around him. Each blow seemed to be able to crush time and space and destroy the world, and the violent power was raging in this spiritual world. But once these powers left his body, the power of the mind would produce a wonderful effect. First, the spiritual energy covering these powers was quickly dissolved and neutralized by the spiritual light around. Then, the violent power would lose its restraint under the spiritual light, and finally shattered, turned into a little light, and disappeared out of thin air. No matter how number 4 exerted his power, he could not break this wonderful spiritual world. Lin Yi also saw the ultimate expression of the power of the ancient gods in this process. The incarnation of the spiritual world, anyone who enters the spiritual world will be affected by their power. First, the supply of external power is cut off. Second, any power under the influence of the mind will lose the mark of the original owner and eventually dissipate into nothingness. Third, only the mind can resist the power of the mind, but there is a qualitative difference between the spiritual power of the ancient god and the spiritual power of number 4, so the spiritual power of number 4 will disintegrate and be absorbed by the spiritual power of the ancient god. It's really terrifying. There seems to be a level suppression of spiritual power. The weak can never resist the strong, and will be eaten up. Through the observation of the true destiny, countless thoughts flashed through Lin Yi's mind. He became more and more vigilant about the ancient god. The other party's spiritual power was very strange and powerful. In his eyes, number 4 was basically doomed to lose. As time passed, all the power of number 4 would be devoured. In fact, the ancient god could have defeated him long ago. When entering the other party's spiritual world, number 4 had already lost. The reason why the other party has not killed him yet is because the ancient god Kong seems to be afraid of something. He is boiling a frog in warm water, consuming No 4's power bit by bit. And number 4 keenly discovered something wrong in the process. If he continues like this, his ending will only be a dead end, without any possibility. He quickly stopped releasing power randomly. The eternal power and spiritual power of the ancient god gathered in his body, and his body shrank rapidly. He was compressing all his strength and making a last stand. A black long sword appeared in front of him. This was his second concrete spiritual product. At this time, he held the long sword in his hand, and all his strength gathered in the long sword. Even his ancient god body was instantly transformed into countless light spots and integrated into this spiritual concrete product. Matter became a spiritual state, a very advanced method of using the mind. At this moment, everything he had was integrated into the black long sword of spiritual concreteness. The next moment, a terrifying force erupted, and the sword light accelerated to an unimaginable extreme speed. Wherever the sword light passed, everything was distorted and cut open. The spiritual world evolved by the ancient god Kong sprinkled countless spiritual brilliances, and in the process of their collision with the sword light, one distortion after another arose. The distortions were constantly punctured like bubbles. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1016. The latest chapter of the Wanchai I Created is updated the fastest. The spiritual world evolved by Gu Shenkong sprinkled countless spiritual brilliance, and in the process of their collision with the sword light, distortions rose one after another. Distortions were constantly pierced like bubbles, and the speed at which distortions appeared and were pierced was getting faster and faster. A huge distortion was spreading around with the long sword as the center. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. Just like a missile constantly accelerating, forming one tearing air shock wave after another in the air, similar distortions and shocks are constantly appearing in the spiritual world. In the deepest part of the spiritual world, Gu Shenkong's mind saw this scene, and a faint indifference flashed in his mind. Gather all the power into one point. Do you want to break the world of the mind? If it is a purely physical world, it may succeed, but there are no rules at the spiritual level. It is meaningless to destroy with a point here. The black sword seemed to have accelerated to the extreme at this time, like a pure black light. The surroundings were all twisted by the spiritual light. When accelerated to this extent, the speed of the black light even reached 100 times the speed of light. If it is in the void, it can even tear the basic structure of the void. But here, there is still no way to make any cracks in the golden spiritual world, which is like a world that will never be destroyed. The power of the mind has nothing to do with the laws of physics. No Four's heart is full of disbelief at this time. How is it possible? Why is this happening? All the power is concentrated into one point, but it can't tear a flaw. Is the spiritual power of a higher level so terrible? There are countless questions flashing in his mind, and his speed is constantly decreasing at this time. That is, his power is fading at an astonishing speed, accelerating to hundreds of times the speed of light, and the consumption is unimaginable. Number 4 also felt the rapid exhaustion of power. His mind seemed to be exhausted. His mind was filled with resentment, but there was nothing he could do. The entire void was watching this war. Everyone knew that the ending seemed to be doomed. Only a few people with spiritual power could truly see the end of this war. Especially those ancient beings, they sensed the power and terror of the ancient gods. That kind of boundless spiritual power made it impossible for them to win. Is this the spiritual power of a higher level? Is the true only hidden in the spiritual level? Whether in the desert void or the life void, each extremely powerful being who had touched the spiritual level was whispering. They fell into deep thought, thinking about the consequences of this war. Facing the soul that was about to fail, No Four's heart was filled with boundless anger. Damn it, what should I do? I've worked so hard for so many years, I don't want to die. If anyone can save me, I'm willing to pay any price. At this moment, a note wrapped in the light of the true destiny appeared in No Four's mind. Do you want to make your wish come true? As long as you are willing to pay the price, I can help you. The note appeared in No Four's mind, and a row of strange words appeared on it. Number 4 saw the words on the note, and his heart was shocked instantly. What is this? Why did it appear in my mind out of thin air? This is a strange power. In an instant, he had seen the essence of the note. However, these thoughts only flashed through his mind, and his focus fell on another point. I am willing to pay the price to save me from here. His thoughts automatically appeared on the note. With his answer, words appeared on the note again. After I save you, you have to serve me for 100 million void years, no bargaining. What? 100 million void years. No Four's mind was shaken, and his mind was full of murderous intent. The other party was watching the opportunity to control him. But at this time, the light from the outside world was getting deeper and deeper, and his power was getting weaker and weaker. He could feel a spiritual power trying to invade his mind. A huge sense of crisis enveloped him. He had a premonition that as long as he was invaded by the power of the mind, he would definitely die. There was no need to make any comparison between losing his life and losing the freedom of 100 million void years. Okay, I agree. His answer and his name appeared on the note in the spiritual power, number 4. The note ignited without wind, and turned into a strange essence in the mind that entangled him and Lin Yi. An extremely terrifying strange power seemed to notice the existence of him and Lin Yi. In the Wanchaiwu, Lin Yi's face showed a faint smile. It's done. The Wanchaiwu finally has a qualified thug. At this time, powerful beings in the void were watching here. Just when everyone thought the situation was settled, Lin Yi slowly stood up. He walked to the door of the Wanchaiwu and gently opened it. The power of the arbitrary door was activated. The next moment, he appeared near the battlefield of Kong and number 4. Zhenming Wujiang instantly rose to the extreme, and after a flash, he had silently stepped into Kong's spiritual world. True destiny and perseverance are activated at the same time, and are not affected by any spiritual power. Appearing in this golden spiritual world, Lin Yi looked around, looking for the trace of number 4. At this time, the master of the spiritual world, Gu Shenkong, also noticed his arrival. The infinite golden light turned into a giant palm and grabbed him, and the spiritual light around him turned into a crystal, blocking his front and back. Gu Shen has passed the information about Lin Yi to them. The moment Lin Yi arrived, Gu Shenkong knew who he was and directly made the strongest counterattack. The third level of spiritual power has very powerful characteristics, and it also has a huge impact on Lin Yi's true destiny. Even in the state of boundless true destiny, Lin Yi can feel the obstruction. At this time, he is like trapped in quicksand, and his actions are greatly hindered. At the same time, the spiritual wave is also rapidly consumed. Sure enough, the higher the level of spiritual power, the greater the impact on true destiny. But it can't reach the point of completely affecting me now. The heart moved. With one step forward, True Destiny Unlimited operated to an unimaginable limit. In an instant, 1/10 of the spiritual waves disappeared from the spiritual wave sphere. At this time, the upper limit of Lin Yi's spiritual wave sphere had been raised to an unimaginable level. With the explosion of 1/10 of the spiritual waves, True Destiny Unlimited reached a new realm, ignoring all constraints and influences. In just a breath, it crossed thousands of times the speed of light and passed through the blockade of the golden giant palm. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1017. Lin Yi came directly in front of number 4. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow EGS situation. In the incredible shock of the other party, he reached out and grabbed the long sword of number 4, and then his feet flashed again, and the light of true destiny flashed. His figure disappeared from this spiritual world like an illusion. When he appeared again, he had arrived in the normal void world. A strange door opened here. Lin Yi took the long sword in his hand, without looking back, stepped into it and disappeared. The strange door also slowly disappeared. In the spiritual world, Gu Shenkong looked at Lin Yi, who was going away with great surprise. At the same time, there was a faint anger. It was the first time he met someone who could snatch the prey from his hands. And it was such a weak existence. From beginning to end, Lin Yi did not even exert any powerful power. Just like that, he simply passed through all his blockades and snatched number 4 and the body of the ancient god star from his hands. This scene was not only seen by the ancient god, but also by countless powerful people in the entire void. Lin Yi appeared in their eyes again, and his move was earth-shattering, shocking countless people. He rescued another being who seemed to be the ancient god from the hands of the ancient god Kong. This scene shocked countless powerful beings and made them feel incredible. And the most shocked among them were the ancient gods themselves. Lin Yi came and went freely in their spiritual world, which even people of the same level as them could not do. The price to save a person from the other party's spiritual world is very shocking. Even they have to go through a fierce battle before it is possible. 5 golden and majestic figures all returned to the ancient god temple in the next moment. Zhen, Hun, Fan, Kong looked at each other. Said in a low voice, "We failed to control the leaders of the major forces in the void, failed to recover number 4 and star, and even failed to recover other shadows. Only the alliance with those ancient beings has reached an agreement, which is a bad sign. Some power is affecting our plan, and there is no sign, we can't detect it. Something is wrong." A's face was extremely solemn, and he said slowly, "Lin Yi, this person has destroyed 2 of our major events. His existence seems to be the appearance of this power. There should be something behind him. Kong's eyes flashed a trace of solemnity. Do you think he is the seed planted by those guys at the spiritual level? The purpose is to hinder our plan. Hearing the words of the ancient god Kong, all the ancient gods were slightly condensed in their hearts. After a long while, Gu Shena shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be. You have also felt his power. That spiritual wave is a higher quality spiritual power. You have also seen the spiritual wave weapon system. Those spiritual waves will absorb the weird essence into the spiritual level, and then be swallowed by some kind of power. We all know that the weird essence is actually an anti-spiritual force. Its essence is equivalent to the level of our spiritual power. So, we can use spiritual power to neutralize the weird essence. But the effect of the spiritual wave is completely different. It breaks the restriction that the weird essence cannot enter the spiritual level. And the weird essence must have been destroyed by some power. No, it should be said that it was absorbed. I have investigated this Lin Yi, from his appearance in the void to everything that has happened so far. His spiritual wave seems to be growing stronger and stronger. I have a guess that he is using the void to. There are strong people from the world group. Let them use spiritual wave weapons to eliminate the weird essence, so as to continuously expand their spiritual waves. The emergence of the spiritual wave weapon system is to continuously expand his spiritual wave limit. And the power he controls, the spiritual wave, is just an energy source. It only exists to promote his power. We have never seen this kind of power. Even those ancient beings we met at the spiritual level have never shown it. And the most important point is that the source of this power can even devour the weird essence. That is anti-psychic power. You should know what this means. This means that this person's power has the characteristics of both spiritual power and anti-psychic power, and can integrate the two powers. This essence can be said to have surpassed spiritual power. There are countless information flashing in Gu Shen's eyes, and he carefully analyzed everything. If Lin Yi were here, he would be shocked. The other party almost completely analyzed everything about his true destiny. He even saw some special features of his true destiny. When the other ancient gods heard Gu Shen's analysis, they all showed surprise on their faces. This is incredible. It actually combines the power of the mind and the anti-mind. This is clearly the only characteristic. The source of everything. He is obviously just an ordinary void creature. Why does he have such power? An unbelievable look appeared in Gu Shenkong's eyes. Ancient God Brahma said slowly, "No matter how he mastered this power, now that we know it, we must not let it go. We must find a way to dig out the secret of this power. Now we have another way. Although his power has a unique nature, it still has an obvious flaw. There is an upper limit to his spiritual wave, otherwise he would not have developed the spiritual wave weapon system. His power needs to be driven by spiritual waves. As long as we can exhaust his spiritual waves, we can expose his flaws. Then capture him. But before that, we have to do one more thing, and that is to block the use of the entire Lingbo weapon system. Prevent him from using the Lingbo weapon system to continue to increase his upper limit. Secondly, his spiritual wave weapon system has a trace of the imprint of his mind. We can trace the coordinates of his mind on the spiritual level through this imprint of his thoughts, and then directly capture his mind. By using a two-pronged approach, we can set up traps and take action at the right time. Ancient God Brahma silently weaved a plan. And we have to be fast. Those guys will come to the void soon. Once they discover the existence of Lin Yi, we will face our competitors. We also need to take advantage of this opportunity to quickly increase the upper limit of strength. Brahman's plan was approved by all the ancient gods. None of them cared about what would happen to the void once the Lingbo weapon system was banned. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1018. Then open the void authority, proceed to the first step, and defeat all the spiritual wave weapon systems. As the voice fell, the five ancient gods stood in a circle. Their power complemented each other, and in an instant it turned into a pillar of light that shot up into the sky and penetrated into the deepest part of the void. Then, a terrible thing happened. A huge wave spread from the deepest part of the void to the entire void like a tsunami. All the principles and operating rules extended from the 5 major rules of the void were affected. The biggest impact was the spiritual wave weapon system. All the spiritual wave weapon systems, including the spiritual and soul-like substances that constitute the truth, all lost the ability to carry the truth in an instant. In an instant, all the spiritual wave weapons in the entire void were instantly ineffective. Because all the truths cannot exist in any spiritual and soul-like substances. The two seemed to be separated by some kind of power, and the result was the spiritual wave weapon systems held by various world groups quickly began to collapse at an unimaginable speed. Even the army that was fighting against the strangeness was instantly trapped in the quagmire of war because of the collapse of the spiritual wave weapon system. For a time, countless people died and were injured in the entire void, and fear swept everyone. No, what's going on? Why did this happen? Why can't the spiritual wave weapon system be used? This change affected countless people, and Lin Yi in the Wanchaiwu was shocked. An unprecedented cold light appeared in his eyes, and his eyes looked at the counter of the Wanchaiwu. All the spiritual wave weapons placed on it did not change on the surface, but the Dao traces inside were rapidly dissipating. Dao traces cannot exist in this world without their carriers, and naturally they cannot carry spiritual waves. In the House of Time, Lin Yi's Blue Star clone has opened the True Destiny Boundless. It directly covered this place, as well as all the Dao inheritance items in his hands. With the protection of the True Destiny Boundless, this change in the underlying structure cannot affect these Dao trace inheritance items. At this time, the practitioners of Blue Star martial arts also encountered huge problems. Because of the change in the underlying structure, the Dao marks in their souls are also rapidly dissipating and can no longer exist in the soul. Because the Dao marks have lost their carriers, they cannot combine with the spirit and condense into Dao marks. They can only exist in the mind, soul, and spirit in the form of information. The truths they have comprehended for themselves have not disappeared, but they can no longer combine with the spirit that carries them and truly appear in this world. And this means that they can no longer induce the power of the mind to descend. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes and revealed a trace of solemnity. These ancient gods are really terrifying. They actually changed the underlying rules of the void directly. Is this the ability of the creator of the void? He couldn't help but think of a novel he had read on Earth. Once a war breaks out between the world of science and technology and the world of fantasy. Those powerful people in the fantasy world, as long as they slightly change the laws of the world's composition, all the systems of science and technology will collapse. Science is an extremely precise civilization that extends from the use of rules. Once there is a problem with the bottom-level rules, it means that all theoretical knowledge derived from science has problems. The theoretical system needs to be replaced and reconstructed. But this is not only applicable to scientific civilization. It also has the same effect on the cultivation system. All civilizations and forces developed based on certain rules. As long as the bottom-level rules change, such civilizations and forces will be fragile and collapse like tiles. At this moment, he truly realized the meaning of this sentence. The Lingbo weapon system he created with great effort was destroyed so easily. Now the only place that still retains the Dao mark is the area inside the House of Time. There is the protection of the True Destiny, so it can ignore the changes in the bottom-level rules. At this time, his Blue Star clone has completed the construction of 2,998 great thousands of imaginary Dao mark worlds. With 2 more great thousands of imaginary Dao mark worlds, the real Dao mark universe can be constructed. However, the first to be constructed is the imaginary Dao mark universe, and the mechanical Dao mark universe is still far behind. Even with the 9 rule texts brought back from the dark side gate, the mechanical Daomark universe has only completed 1,000 great thousands of Daomark worlds. Moreover, in this incident, the mechanical Daomark universe made Lin Yi see some dangerous places. This method of changing the underlying rules was clearly used by the ancient god. This means that all the rules evolved from the 5 major rules are affected by the 5 major rules. Only the imagination Dao trace is completely unrelated to the 5 major rules. It is a little light of life and imagination. It is a Dao trace that is not controlled by anyone, and the Dao trace universe derived from this Dao trace is absolutely safe and will not have any loopholes. The mechanical Dao is very cosmic. In Lin Yi's mind, he has planned to refine it into a powerful treasure and use the power of the mind to refine it. The mechanical Dao trace universe is impossible to merge with his mind, but it is good to use it as a weapon. The action of the ancient god made him firm in his own ideas. Lin Yi's eyes flashed with cold light. It seems that these guys really want to deal with me. The ancient gods are really powerful. They actually calculated my spiritual waves and my true power. They want to cut off the source of the growing spiritual waves. Next, they probably want to use a war of attrition to make me reveal my flaws. At this time, he could feel that the imprint of his thoughts was being collected by some kind of power. What do you want to do with my imprint of thoughts? Is it to trace the source? Find the source of my spiritual waves, the coordinates of my mind. Countless information flashed in his mind, and Lin Yi roughly guessed what these ancient gods were going to do. I won't let you do what you want. With a thought, countless imprints of thoughts collapsed in an instant, turned into nothingness, and dissipated in the void. But at this time, he frowned slightly. Not all disappeared? It seems that some power has blocked my thoughts. After all, the immortal way is also a power system derived from the rules of the void. It's not a big deal that the ancient gods have the means to block my thoughts. But it's not that simple to trace the source. A hint of coldness appeared in Lin Yi's eyes. The imagined Daomark universe is still short of 2 great thousand imagined Daomark worlds, which will take a few days. When the imagined Daomark universe is integrated into the spirituality can be integrated into the spiritual world. With the help of the true destiny, even if you are at the spiritual level, you may not be my opponent. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Xuanhuan Luan Tianji. Chapter 1019. The latest chapter of the Wanchaiwu I Created is updated the fastest. Lin Yi's spiritual power is so huge that as long as his spirituality enters the Lingbo sphere, he is sure to deal with any existence at the spiritual level. The power of the ancient gods against the Lingbo weapon system affected countless worlds in an instant. The entire void was filled with grief in an instant, and countless people were very scared. Even the strong in the void felt tremendous pressure. All this made them feel heavy, and the powerful power of the ancient gods of the ancient temple that affected their hearts made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. The void is rapidly becoming a world that these strong people cannot understand and recognize. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow method G. Situation. 2 void days passed in a blink of an eye, and 2,000 void years have passed in the House of Time. There was a hint of joy in the eyes of Lan Xing's clone. In his soul, a huge Dao imagination world like the universe is slowly running. If you look closely, you can see that this is a huge universe composed of 3,000 great worlds, countless middle worlds and small worlds. Countless imaginary Dao traces are running in it, producing countless wonderful scenes. For example, everything in this universe is completely different from the real void. Just like time is completely chaotic, this area is downstream, another area is upstream, and even some areas are completely static. For example, in this area, various substances will continue to produce various changes over time. Matter is constantly aggregated, constantly growing, and constantly condensing. It will not be like the matter in the void that constantly decays radioactively and finally turns into powder. Everything in the entire imaginary universe violates the normal rules of the void. But these countless imaginations and chaos combined together form a perfect harmony. There will be another way to keep the whole world in a cycle. For example, the constantly condensing matter will eventually swallow up the whole world after condensing various material properties. The swallowed world will turn into a huge object, and then this object will explode outward and become a new world again. A unique cycle continues to evolve in this imaginary universe. The blue star clone felt the wonderful universe in his soul, and a trace of joy appeared in his eyes. His mind moved slightly, and the spirituality in the deepest part of his soul appeared directly in the center of the imaginary Deo Trace universe. The spirituality appeared here, generating an unimaginable attraction. The imaginary Deo Trace universe began to collapse rapidly and merged into the fundamental spirituality. And countless traces appeared on the fundamental spirituality, which were all the Deo traces that made up the imaginary Deo Trace universe. After the spirituality merged with countless Deo traces, it was also undergoing wonderful changes. A hazy, unprecedented mysterious brilliance began to permeate from the spirituality. It was a pure spiritual brilliance. The huge spiritual brilliance was blooming from the spirituality of the blue star clone. At the same time, the fundamental spirituality seemed to have turned into a universe, and the Deo mark was running rapidly, producing strands of mysterious power similar to spirituality. Lin Yi's blue star clone spirituality also began to emit a kind of eternal nature. This is a special nature produced by the operation of the universe. The mysterious power is blooming little by little from this substance. At the same time, the fundamental spirituality of Lin Yi's blue star clone has been connected to the deeper part of the mind. He can clearly feel that endless spiritual energy is surging from the deepest part of his mind. The power of the mind and the most fundamental spirituality are merging, and the eternal nature is also producing some subtle reactions with the power of the mind. Thinking in his heart, Lin Yi has understood the second level of power of the mind. That is, the fusion of eternal nature and spiritual power will make the power of the mind appear directly in the void world. Instead of appearing in this world in the form of phenomena with the help of Deo mark. With a move in his heart, Lin Yi's fundamental spirituality, eternal nature, and spiritual power merged into a hazy state, like a chicken egg. Some mysterious product is being nurtured in it. Lin Yi's consciousness fell into a state of etherealness, merging into this mysterious egg. The egg was beating and contracting slowly like a heart, and finally, at a certain moment, it shattered. Countless fragments peeled off from the eggshell, and a round gem appeared in it. This gem contained a majestic universe, and Lin Yi's consciousness and this gem were completely one. He could feel infinite information running in the universe of this gem, and the power of the mind evolved into a real existence in the various truths and information running in this gem. This gem is the real universe, everything in it is real. The only difference is that all the creations in it are hundreds of millions of times smaller than the real creations in the void. This is because although the power of the mind is strong, it has its own limits. Although the Daohan universe is perfect, but the limit of power cannot allow it to evolve into a perfect universe, but can only evolve into a reduced universe. However, even so, the power that can be exploded by this concrete universe gem of the mind is beyond Lin Yi's imagination. In the eyes of the blue star clone, there was a look like the Lord of the universe, and he could distort the surrounding void and all the rules with his random movements. Because he was shrouded in the rules of another universe, he was completely unaffected by the void of this world. At this moment, the blue star clone was not inferior to the countless antiques in the void in terms of strength. Even if it was number 4 who occupied the body of the ancient god, it would take a fight to know who would win and who would lose. The next moment, the blue star clone was shrouded in the majestic power of the spiritual universe and disappeared into the void. When he appeared again, he had already stepped into the spiritual level and appeared in the center of the spiritual wave sphere. At this time, his body had become spiritualized. Under the power of the spiritual universe, the material and soul of his body were all transformed into the state of the mind. Standing in the spiritual wave sphere, he was surrounded by endless spiritual waves. Then, these spiritual waves rushed into the blue star clone frantically, and all the spiritual power was replaced by spiritual waves, including the product of the spiritual embodiment, the universe orb of the imagination Deo Mark, all changed again. The spiritual wave was injected into the universe orb of the imagination Deo Mark, dissolving and swallowing all the spiritual power of the blue star clone. In the end, the blue star clone disappeared completely, leaving only a universe orb of the spirit wave that was completely composed of the spirit wave, Deo Mark, eternal nature, and fundamental spirituality. Fundamental spirituality is at the center of everything. It is the core of everything, like a connector that connects the other three powers. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1020. The latest chapter of the Wanchai I Created is updated the fastest. Lin Yi's most fundamental consciousness is the cosmic consciousness of this Lingbo universe orb. With a thought, the Lingbo universe orb and the entire Lingbo sphere are connected together. The brilliance of the six true lives lights up, and the Lingbo sphere and the Lingbo universe instantly become an invisible point. This point seems to be non-existent in the dark spiritual level. It cannot be found, cannot be touched, and there is no external trace, as if it does not exist, absolutely free and safe. And as long as Lin Yi's mind moves, in an instant, this point will burst out with unimaginable terrifying power. For example, at this time, the point of nothingness released a wonderful Lingbo brilliance. The brilliance also transformed into a spiritual throne in this dark spiritual level, which exudes a faint spiritual brilliance, a kind of spiritual material. The point is still constantly releasing one spiritual brilliance after another. These radiances evolved into various things, including mountains, rocks, water, metals, pavilions, palaces, islands, and even stars, planets, and everything in the world. They all appeared on the spiritual level in the form of spiritual embodiment. The next moment, a small world appeared on the spiritual level, emitting an extremely intense spiritual radiance. Other spiritual embodiment products were attracted by this small world and fell into it. They were absorbed and crushed by this spiritual embodiment world, incorporated into the operation of the spiritual embodiment world, and became a part of it. Lin Yi's fundamental consciousness revealed a trace of joy. My current state is very wonderful. I can use the power of spiritual waves and the characteristics of the spiritual wave universe orb to create countless spiritual concrete products. Their most basic structure is spiritual power, but they can be transformed into spiritual concrete creations according to the operating rules of my spiritual universe. But it is still limited by the upper limit of my spiritual waves. It is impossible to really evolve a complete spiritual world or universe. Unless one day, I complete the infinite true destiny and infinite spiritual waves, it is possible to evolve a complete world at the true spiritual level. But now I have completely hidden myself, no one can find the coordinates of the spiritual wave sphere, and my mind has completely merged with the spiritual wave sphere. The void world still has the main body and two clones to locate me, I understand. Thinking of this, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. One of the most important reasons why the ancient gods went to the spiritual level is to find their own minds. Then completely merge with themselves and hide their coordinates. When they returned to the void, not only did their bodies return, but their minds also left the spiritual level and became a real whole. Life is not complete by nature, and the mind and body consciousness are separated. Only when the mind, body, soul, consciousness, etc. are completely integrated into one can it be true life, without any loopholes or natural flaws. At this time, Lin Yi has realized that true eternity must first become a truly complete life. Everything in oneself must be integrated into one, in order to truly touch eternity. The next moment, the point existing in the spiritual level sensed the clone in the void world, the soul of the original body. The true destiny boundless directly exploded with this point as the center, and then disappeared at the spiritual level. When this point appeared in the void, it directly turned into a majestic figure. This figure is Lin Yi's blue star clone, exuding an eternal breath. At this time, Lin Yi was thinking, is this the state of a complete life? He looked at his hands, and there was a hazy gap between him and the whole world and the whole void. He is a complete whole, self-circulating, and his body is filled with a kind of spiritual energy like brilliance. That was the wonderful power flowing out of the eternal nature produced after the fusion of the Deo-Mark universe and spirituality. It was like a power that came out of nothing. At this time, there were two most important powers in his body, one of which was this energy that could be produced endlessly. The second was the spiritual wave. The spiritual wave sphere had been integrated into the deepest part of his spirituality and was wrapped in spirituality. His blue star clone had become an empty shell, and it was meaningless whether it existed or not. As soon as his mind moved, the clone collapsed and disappeared without a trace. And his spirituality returned to the original body in a flash. At this time, the original body slowly woke up from the practice of the void tribulation, and two spiritualities appeared in his soul. These two spiritualities were both himself. One was the spirituality of the blue star clone, and the other was the spirituality of the original body. However, the spirituality of the blue star clone at this time exuded an eternal light. At the center of the spirituality, the spiritual wave sphere was slowly rotating, releasing the power of the true destiny. In comparison, the spirituality of the original body was still in a primitive state, but there were Deo marks of energy and matter on it. After watching the void backlash phenomenon when the president survived the 5 tribulations, Lin Yi had already made a decision in his heart. He waved his hand casually, and a fruit of time and space appeared in front of him. This was a treasure exchanged from the Soul Master, which could cultivate the void tribulation and the cosmic light tribulation in a short time. Since the blue star clone stepped into eternity, he had already understood the correct path. The spiritual nature is born from birth, and the birth of eternal nature is just the beginning of the completeness of life. It is not important to adopt a certain method. The so-called backlash of the void is just a rule left by the ancient gods. If there is no backlash of the void, a large number of people can complete the eternal level of cultivation through various methods. The world will be in chaos, and eventually the rule of the ancient gods will be in trouble. After understanding everything clearly, Lin Yi no longer has any fear of the backlash of the void. He swallowed the time and space fruit in one gulp, and the fruit began to melt rapidly. Information about time and space quickly emerged in his spirituality, and the imprint of time and space began to condense. In the house of time, a year passed in a blink of an eye. With the help of the time and space fruit, the void calamity and the universe light calamity were quickly completed without any waves. Now only the last true spirit calamity is left, and Lin Yi has the treasures needed for this realm. After all, he has obtained 1/10 of the output of hundreds of billions of world groups, and what he lacks the most is various treasures. With a wave of his hand, a crystal appeared in front of him. Like a dreamy universe, it is beautiful to an unimaginable level. This is a treasure of the soul, extracted from countless soul crystals. Each one has a huge amount of soul. This thing has destroyed at least hundreds of billions of life forms, and is refined through countless methods.